Hey, Matt Johnson here with Clam Outdoors, blackfish gear and all-terrain bass jigs. You know, bass fishing in Minnesota is an absolute riot. Bass fishing anywhere in the country is an absolute riot. And there's so many choices in terms of presentation and lures you can fish. I'm gonna run through some of the most popular bass types of presentations. If I showed you everyone that exists, you're gonna be watching this video for hours. So we're gonna go through some of the various styles and break down a few of the different lure types. For starters, I like to call this first one moving baits. These are going to be your chatter baits. You've heard about chatter baits, you've heard about spinner baits, you've heard about swim jigs. This is a swim jig. You've heard about small swim baits. So there's all kinds of variations of these moving baits, but these are the type of presentations you're going to cast and you're going to work or retrieve back to the boat. They have paddle tails. They have blades on them like a chatterbait or a spinnerbait. There's something that needs to be engaged. That's what I call a moving bait. You're gonna find all different kinds of those at a retail store near you. Whether it's a chatterbait, swim jig, swim bait, spinnerbait, you get the idea. Those are your moving baits. Very, very popular presentation, just to cover water, cast around, shallow, deep, you can count them down. Very versatile presentation. Next, you're gonna have crankbaits. And you're probably asking maybe what that is. This is a crankbait in my hand here. It's gonna move, it's gonna dive. They have lips on the front. Some are lipless, but at the end of the day, these are designed to be thrown at a specific depth range. Like this one might only dive down 3 feet. There's crankbaits that dive down 20 feet. So again, these are gonna be a cast and retrieve style presentation. They're gonna have multiple treble hooks on them, different points to hook the fish, all that kind of stuff. Crankbaits come in a variety of sizes. Some float, some suspend, some sink. Like I said, they go all different depth ranges. That's gonna be your crankbait, another popular option for bass fishing. Then you're gonna have top water. A lot of anglers love to fish bass with top water presentations. This happens to be a frog in my hand right there. So this is gonna float. I can cast this around shallow cover, lily pads, emergent vegetation, whatever it might be. There's also top waters that come in the form of poppers, which is a variation of a crankbait that floats. Floating worms. There's other things that you can use as a top water presentation. Buzz baits, prop baits. There's other ones out there. So top water is another popular way to catch fish. And I'll be honest, it's a super exciting way to catch fish. When I take my kids fishing, there's always a frog tied on because you can throw it out there, big explosion. It's fun to watch. It's entertaining. It's exciting. I don't care how old you are. The adrenaline gets pumping when a bass crushes a top water frog. So top water, another great option. Now there's various ways to fish soft plastics. Soft plastics is a very popular way to catch bass, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. For the simplicity of this video, I'm gonna hone in on a few choices. To starters, Texas rig. This is the way you rig a worm. This is rigged Texas rig. It's weedless. You can see the hook point, I'll pop it out of there, is buried into this worm. I can fish this in a weedless fashion. Now I can fish this like this without any weight. I can put a weight on my line. I can allow it to slide up and down. I can peg it. There's all kinds of variations to fish this Texas rigged worm. Very popular way to catch fish in cover, around docks, around milfoil, around weeds, coontail, you name it. It'll plummet through. It generally doesn't get snagged up and you can work the bait back to the boat. That's a Texas rig. Another way to fish this exact same worm is gonna be on, you can maybe guess what it is, a jig worm. And what's a jig worm? It's just that. It's a jig with a worm. Now I'm fishing an all-terrain mighty head. I'm using that same worm, just a 6 or 7 inch green pumpkin worm. And now I can cast this out there. Now this is gonna sink. It's got an exposed hook, so around very heavy cover, you might wanna be a little more cautious, but this will rip through the weeds too. This is gonna be a jig worm. Very versatile way to fish this. Comes in oodles of different colors, types, sizes, models, makes, but this is what you would call a jig worm. Now, in recent years, the big craze is the Ned rig. The Ned rig is a variation of the jig worm, still using soft plastic. It's just a smaller, profiled, bodied plastic to imitate just a smaller, more finesse style jig worm. Smaller jig head, smaller shank hook, smaller plastic. That's what you're gonna see out there is called a Ned rig. Catches a lot of fish the same way as a jig worm. And probably one of the easiest ways to catch a bass, still using soft plastics, is gonna be what we call a Wacky rig. And that's just a plain hook with a soft plastic stick bait hooked right in the middle, kind of like a hot dog. That thing bounces up and down. Now this is a cast and let it do its own thing. I like to call it marinating. You just cast it out there, let it sit let it sink around, the bass will come find it and pick it up. It's very hard for a largemouth bass to resist a Wacky rig. So lots of ways to fish soft plastic. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are tons of ways to bass fish. There are plenty of situations and presentations I haven't touched on, but these are some of the more popular choices you're going to see in retail stores that'll work on a lake near you, and it gives you a good arsenal of things to try if you get out bass fishing. So there you have it. Get out there, catch some fish, enjoy the open water season. The bass are waiting.